goodness. I know how to do the vibrators, but I don't know how to get this. Hello, everybody. Hi. Hi. Thank you to Fred for inviting me into this new space, physically new space for me and into your company. Thank you for this opportunity. Heidi, that was just fabulous. Thank you for setting the stage. So what I'm going to do with you is to be quite irreverent. What Heidi's shown is a little shocking for me, and I'm not going to go into the ethics and morality around it. We can do that in question time because there's a lot that's uncomfortable. And when I watched this the first time with Heidi, I remembered that I had the same kind of experience when I encountered sex toys for the first time coming out of apartheid South Africa, and there it was 1994, and I was in San Francisco doing my doctorate, and I'd never seen a sex toy, and I felt that same, oh my goodness, this is disruptive to me, this is just terrible, what's this going to do to people's sexuality? And I felt it again when I had to be trained, oh, that's the wrong word, when I was training into understanding BDSM, and I felt this incredible discomfort around this understanding, you know, the pain and the pleasure. And I felt the same kind of discomfort now, moving into artificial intelligence, into the world of robotics and sex bots, really. And I'm determined to endure the discomfort. So I'm talking to you from a place of not scientific evidence, because the evidence is not there yet. I'm talking to you from a place of a clinical perspective of where I sit most of the time in my therapy room, and talking about what marriages look like and how I think irreverently sex dolls might actually be a really good idea for us humans, because of how we currently are living in a world of so much difficulty with our marriages and our relationships, that perhaps having the sex doll might just be the solution for some of us primitive humans. So if we look at the purpose of marriage and we take marriage right back, marriage was originally put together, it was a construct for political and economic purposes, for people just to get together and manage a home, manage feeding each other, manage raising children together. And I feel that if we bring sex robots in, we might go back to that place where marriage is kind of a neutral space which has expectation of two people living together in good companionship, not having the incredibly high expectations of which we have today and which we all suffer incredibly because of that. More on marriage just now. So the disruptor of marriage as it was then was something called love, something we all chase. Yeah, where really we were told that love had to be the reason why we get into these situations or relationships with people. And the moment that you brought love into this thing called marriage, there was a disruption. And people didn't really know how to meet somebody, how to match with somebody, how to choose, and how to stay with somebody. Included in this idea of what love was and marriage was the expectation of having to be sexual with this person for a very long time. And back in the day, you know, you only could be married perhaps for 10 years, 12 years, and you die. But as we live longer, so the expectation of having love for the same person grew and has led us to where we are today. So love was a big disruptor. From a technology point of view, the real disruptor that came into our lives was, in a much more modern time, was oral contraceptive. Oral contraceptive came in, and that brought about massive changes in terms of female equality. Feminism came in more or less the same time in the 1960s, because women could take control of their sexuality. So here for the first time, women could swallow a pill and know that they wouldn't be able to fall pregnant. And paradoxically, what happened with this was that more women fell pregnant because they had the sense of freedom, of sexual freedom that the sexual revolution brought to them. So we can see that technology disrupts our behavior in unexpected ways as well. I'm going to throw in a huge disruptor, which is very present in my lifetime. In 1999, a drug was launched, and I don't know if any of you will know what I'm going to say the drug was. 1999, I don't know if any of you were too young to still be around then. Viagra was launched, right? I was going to say, hands up who's used Viagra. Viagra. Yeah, Viagra is mostly used by young people together with recreational drugs, but that's another story. Why was this so disruptive? Because it changed the very nature of sexuality and our expectation that we have for each other. It is, a PD5 inhibitor is a magnificent drug because it really does work and is a lifesaver for men who have true erectile dysfunction. But look at the expectations that it has brought to men and to women around what sexuality should be. It should be about a man having an erection all the time, being able to be erect just by looking at a woman, and no excuses for him. He cannot have a headache anymore. Not that he ever admitted, but he cannot imagine having a sex robot. He never has a headache, because that would be kind of convenient for women. And also for men, not to be bothered with having this erection and having this pressure and having this nagging look and this disappointment. I get couples coming into my therapy room where she is enormously disappointed in him because he is not able to have erections and thrust for as long as what she wants him to. I mean, for goodness sake, woman, you know, he can only go 2 to 3 minutes, and she says, like, I want 20 minutes of thrusting, nothing else is going to satisfy me. Lady, you need a sex robot. I think I'd love to be able to say that one day. And take the pressure off men to have to perform at that level all the time. So how I came into the world very directly, into the tech world, was when, some of you may remember, some of you may be present, I'm not going to ask for hands up, with Ashley Madison. Have you heard of Ashley Madison? Yeah, Ashley Madison so came into this country in about 2013, and their byline at the time was, life is short, have an affair. And they approached me and they said, we really want to work with you in South Africa. And I said, whoa, forget about it. There's enough HIV/AIDS and we don't need to be spreading anymore with multiple partners. I'm not interested. They launched their site, obviously, in this country. And then in my therapy room started coming women who were saying to me, I'm so happily married. And I've got into this app because I was just kind of curious. And I found that I am so excited, beyond excited. My entire well-being, my entire sense of self has become uplifted since I'm now chatting to other men and to other women online. I'm even getting offline and I'm meeting these men and women and I'm having real sex with them, and I've never felt happier, and I don't feel guilty. What's wrong with me? And it began to happen more and more frequently until I couldn't turn away from it any longer. And I went back to Ashley Madison and I said, I actually want to do some research around this. There is something that's going on from a revolutionary sexual point of view that I need to be part of. And that's where my journey began. So I sat on Ashley Madison, Tinder. I didn't get onto Grindr because I don't have the goods to be shown off, but I did get onto these dating sites. For 2 years, I misrepresented myself as a single woman meeting men, and as a married man interacting with women on Ashley Madison. And I did a whole lot of research around what was going on in my book, and my work was called Cyber Infidelity. That was the beginning for me, looking at why it is that so many people are going offline suddenly, now that it is there, now that it's available, now that the internet is there, which is, of course, the biggest disruptor to our sexuality and to our intimacy. Why is it that so many people are going offline and interacting in ways that we never thought were possible and that we never would have done or even defined ourselves as being infidels, but suddenly there we were doing all of these things? So the internet broke open for me a place where I then began clinically to explore with people, what are you actually doing online? And found that this is where people were discovering their sexuality alone and with partners. The porn story began to erupt enormously, as well as sex toys, which Heidi has covered very beautifully. The whole world of sex toys was suddenly available and accessible to everybody, and it began to be part of their routine sexuality, and people began to be stretching themselves into more and really interesting places sexually, alone, with partners, and with other people. As this was happening, there was really interesting other things that were popping up at this time, which was, for me, 2015, 2016, where the world began to erupt very differently. And things such as gender began to change. And no longer is gender seen as a binary of either male or female. At this time, there was a huge, and there is a very huge movement amongst people who are gender non-conforming to ensure that their rights are met. And so today, there isn't just the binary. We talk about non-binary genders. Today there is, in fact, I have now officially claimed, I never talk about he or she, I talk about he, she, or they. And they is a pronoun that I invite people to tell me, what is your pronoun? Because people don't like to be identified purely as he, she. So this has brought us incredible disruption. This is what technology has brought to our own sense of self and our intimacy. So not only that, but sexual orientation has become way more fluid for all of us. I'm currently working with somebody who I've known since she was in her 20s. And she came into my therapy room at the time because she was in a relationship with a man, and we went through the whole process of her disengaging from this relationship. She then got involved with a woman and has been in a relationship with a woman for about 4 years, and we're now disengaging her. I am busy disengaging her from that relationship. And she told me the other day she's back on Tinder again, and she's dating and looking to date men and women. 10 years ago, it would have been like, which box do you fit into? Are you gay? Are you straight? Are you lesbian? Are you, what are you? Today it's like, okay, this is interesting. This is where you are. You're fluid in your sexual orientation. And this has become much, much more acceptable, where people are just flowing into genders, into sexual orientation, and into different family structures, which would never have happened before technology. Different family structures. In fact, today, very interestingly, I read that South African Census put out a number. 62% of people who register their babies' births do not have details of their fathers. In our country, 62% of people have got absent fathers. So there are new family structures that are developing where you have only women raising up children. You also have different what's called relationship structures. So no longer is it either I am engaged, dating, courting, engaged, now we get married, and then we get divorced, or we have an affair, we get divorced, or then we get married again, we have another affair, we get divorced. It's no longer that. There are so many different structures that people are finding themselves in only because of the internet, only because of technology. Things like hookups, casual sex, friends with benefits, threesomes, and then the most popular one, where we really are moving into, which is polyamory and open relationships. So what are we learning about relationships and about marriages and about expectations is that people are really pretty dissatisfied, which is why they're going online and finding an enormous amount of satisfaction by chatting with other people that they would never meet, don't want to meet, and would never have met before technology actually came along. So my research then began to take me on a really interesting journey, and the research is just beginning to emerge from the polyamorous community, and I joined that community and have been going to academic meetings throughout the world, which is really fabulous to see how it's growing. The literature, the evidence is growing more and more every single year. And what I then wanted to know was, if so many people are going online and cheating, even though they don't define it as cheating, what do they want from marriages today? What is the expectation of marriage? And I found that the expectations of marriage, as I say, were incredibly high. We don't want to just survive in a marriage. We want to be able to thrive in a marriage. And we want to have meaning and passion and commitment from all the people in our lives. Even if we're online, we're offline, we want to have that. And yet it's a huge stretch. We're tired and we're stressed. And so marriages begin to feel very uncomfortable for us, which is why people cheat. Now, I had to go and do some training in trauma counseling because of the enormous trauma that infidelity brings, right? So infidelity brings this incredible trauma, and I want people not to be traumatized. So I began to think about what are the alternatives for people other than cheating. There are reasons why so many people are cheating online as well as offline. What are the reasons? What is it that drives people into that space and ends up, because it does always end up in incredible pain and incredible trauma. And then I began to extend into this poly community and thinking, maybe this is the solution. Maybe people really do want to have more than one partner, and I've got to break out of my heteronormative box and begin to think a little more non-heteronormative into a non-consensual non-monogamy, move from there into consensual non-monogamy space where people are agreeing, making agreements to get into relationships with more than one person at the same time. And more this became evident through my clinical practice and through my work in the poly community, that this is today the most dominant form of relationship. Whether we are doing it covertly or overtly, we are wanting and having more than one person in our relationship, because the model, the heteronormative model, is so restrictive for us. Technology has made this possible. It has brought open this possibility of engaging with more than one person at the same time. And I'm constantly amazed and excited at the possibility that this brings to people's lives. I guess I would do almost anything to have people not get into infidelity situations because of the trauma that brings. So the cyber infidelity and the non-monogamy and the polyamory have brought me into an interesting place now, thinking about sex robots. Because when we think about why is it that we get so upset about infidelity, it's because we kind of catch feelings for other people. And as a species, we don't like to want to catch feelings. We want to have somebody who's exclusively ours, and we want to feel we're the one and only and the most special. So what would happen if we did bring in a sex robot? Would marriages not thrive if we could kind of take the sex and the headache out of it and have a robot perform that task for us? Would it not be okay to have a robot when you have a couple, and this is most couples who have what we call desire discrepancy, where there's always going to be one person in the relationship who desires sexuality more than the other. And the tension that that brings is enormous and very difficult, and a lot of conflict is generated from couples where one is more interested in being sexual than the other. Wouldn't it be just fabulous to have kind of somebody there who you could press a button and she or he would just be available to you to be sexual? And then we come back to looking at what marriage would look like. Would marriages not thrive if that pressure to perform was gone? If we could take the sex out of the marriage? Think about it. When you're in a relationship, and the minute you bring sexuality into it, that whole friend zone, and you bring the sexuality, suddenly there's this tension of expectation of now I have to be in this committed thing and I have to say I love you. People want to avoid that. They want to have a sense of more freedom. They want to be engaging more freely because it's so constricting. So would a sex robot not be the solution? Are we not going to come back to a place where marriages just are practical, productive, co-parenting, where we were able to be in a situation where we could outsource our sexuality? Thank you for your attention.